All right, so some interesting stuff so far. Things I agree with, things I'm a little on the fence about. Let's see what his next set of arguments are.
What if addiction isn't about your chemical hooks? What if addiction is about your cage? What if addiction is an adaptation to your environment? Looking at this, there was another professor called Peter Cohen in the Netherlands who said, maybe we shouldn't even call it addiction. Maybe we should call it bonding. Human beings have a natural and innate need to bond. And when we're happy and healthy, we'll bond and connect with each other. But if you can't do that because you're traumatized or isolated or beaten down by life, you will bond with something that will give you some sense of relief.
Okay. What he's saying is that if you can't bond with other people, then you will bond with substances. Are there times when you bond just fine with other people and you still use substances? And that's absolutely the case. There are certainly examples and there are certainly trajectories of drug and alcohol use in which you see someone who is essentially healthy and doing well, and alcohol and drugs starts to erode their life. Point two, in terms of counterfactuals, is if you are a family member, you've tried the loving approach. You've tried talking gently to them. You've tried inviting them to your house. You've tried setting them up for jobs. You've tried a lot of these things that he's talked about, and you've experienced defeat with that. Do we want to connect people back to their families and back to their communities? Yes. But you can't just love someone out of addiction, and you can't just provide them services out of addiction. Another counterfactual is a lot of people got better when their loved one said, that's enough. I'm not putting up with this anymore. You need to get some help. Or a court system said, yeah, that's your second DUI, buddy. You don't have any more choices. We're sending you to go get treatment somewhere. And people get better in those situations. So I don't want to say that everything that we know about drug addiction is wrong, when some of the stuff that we do has some benefit. Maybe not alone by itself, but it has some benefit. So let's see what his next set of claims are.
Decriminalize all drugs, from cannabis to crack. But, and this is the crucial next step, take all the money we used to spend on cutting addicts off, on disconnecting them, and spend it instead on reconnecting them with the society. And that's not really what we think of. What they did wasn't really what we think of as drug treatment in the United States and Britain. So they do residential rehab, they do psychological therapy that does have some value. But the biggest thing they did was the complete opposite of what we do. A massive program of job creation for addicts and microloans for addicts to set up small businesses.
So he's talking about Portugal. Portugal decriminalized everything. And the results are mixed. That they decriminalized everything, and they did bring in this massive program of connecting people to society again through jobs and so on. I applaud that massive program to bring people back into society, and I think drug treatment programs that don't address those kind of things and they just look at it as a medical condition are foolish. So decriminalizing, the other thing about decriminalizing is that when we've decriminalized marijuana, we have seen the rates of marijuana increase, marijuana use. And we've seen emergency rooms suddenly have people who are kind of have this syndrome from smoking too much pot. It's not really an overdose, but they were showing up in Denver with this too much pot syndrome. I'll see if I can find that article and link it at the bottom here. But simply decriminalizing isn't enough. And it may actually produce some unintended consequences. There's evidence that the murder rate actually went up slightly following the decriminalization because the drug gangs were all fighting with each other in the wake of that chaos. And there's evidence that experimentation went up. Decriminalization as the answer, yeah, I'm suspicious of that.
And the results are in. Injecting drug use is down in Portugal, according to the British Journal of Criminology, by 50%, 50%. Overdose is massively down, HIV is massively down among addicts. Addiction in every study is significantly down. One of the ways you know it's worked so well is that almost nobody in Portugal wants to go back.
I agree with the bent of what he's saying, that relationships are really important, that connection is really important. I don't know if I can get behind decriminalization though. 100% decriminalization, I think there's unintended consequences with that. I'll just say that.
If you're really candid, it's hard loving an addict, and there's going to be lots of people who know in this room you're angry a lot of the time. And I think one of the reasons why this debate is so charged is because it runs through the heart of each of us, right? Everyone has a bit of them that looks at an addict and thinks, I wish someone would just stop you. What I try to do now, and I can't tell you I do it consistently, and I can't tell you it's easy, is to say to the addicts in my life that I want to deepen the connection with them, to say to them, I love you whether you're using or you're not. I love you whatever state you're in, and if you need me, I'll come and sit with you.
Okay, very well stated, and I think making those kind of statements to an addict is a very good thing to do. There's no evidence that complaining and criticizing and threatening helps. And there's clear evidence that those kind of things tend to backfire and make people worse. At the same time, it's way more nuanced than that. And you may have to impose boundaries. You may have to say, yeah, but you can't come to my house, or you can't come to my house high. So I would say in general, he's a fantastic speaker, and he does a really good job of going, yeah, it's not just moral failing. It's not. He's right. And it's not just this medical model. He's right. It's not just a brain disease. It's also not just about connection. You know what? One more thing. In closing, I would just say that because there's all of these factors and you're working with a human being, that one of the best things we can do is when we're bringing someone into treatment or we're talking with someone is to ask them what's going to be most helpful to them. Is accountability going to be important? They just got a DUI, those criminal sanctions, is that a big motivating factor for them? Then let's use that. Is their wife being upset with them? Is that a motivating factor? Let's use that. Is understanding triggers in the medical model and how it interferes with your ability to make judgments and to delay gratification, is that important to the person? Then let's make use of that. Is connection going to be important? Job skills going to be important? Is life skills and communication skills going to be important? Let's ask the person what they think is going to be most important, and let's work with them to kind of cobble together a treatment that includes the things that are going to be most important to them. And let's not impose from on top. This is the way it should be, and this is the one path. And if you're not following this one path, then you're wrong. So, and I don't think this guy would ever do that, but he is suggesting that there's essentially one driver of addiction and its connection, and that it's just not true. We can be way more sophisticated, and we can help way more people if we're willing to keep that in mind, but also keep in mind all the other spokes on the wheel, right? So I think it's a great TED Talk. I really appreciate that he breaks some strongholds of it's just about morals and it's just about a medical issue. It's not. It's way more than that, and I really thank him for that. Do have some disagreements with his conclusions and some of the statements he makes along the way. Overall, though, I give it a really high B+, because he's just so engaging in the way he talks about it, and he does a really good job of saying, yeah, the war on drugs hasn't been the panacea either. So I really appreciate him for that.